Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Kaya May, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Growing the Game podcast. Today's episode focuses on women's involvement within hockey, featuring an interview with the amazing Rachel Doerrie. Hope you enjoy. Before we get into today's interview segment, I'm going to highlight an interesting story in the history of women in hockey. The first woman to have her name on the Stanley Cup was Marguerite Norris, the first female chief executive in league history. She assumed the position of president of the Detroit Red Wings after the former owner, her father James Norris, passed away in 1952, leaving shares of the team ownership to her and her brother Bruce. Shortly after her takeover, reports came out that the arena seemed cleaner. It was freshly painted, and a safety screen was put in place to protect the audience from pucks flying off the ice. You know, because that's pretty important to have. Norris also advocated for arenas to be more inclusive to female fans, something that is still being worked on today, and for all farm teams to be equally treated throughout the early systems in the 1950s. She did face a bit of discrimination. It was the 1950s, and it was the NHL. The notable bad guy, Conn Smythe, forbade Norris from sitting on the NHL Board of Governors. She did secretly vote, though, through the Red Wings GM, Jack Adams, using hand gestures during meetings. So, little fun fact, Jack Adams was also not happy about answering to a woman in her 20s who was over 30 years younger than him. He reportedly called her dearie. Yikes. Marguerite, even though she helped lead the Detroit Red Wings to a Stanley Cup in 1954 and 1955, she was eventually ousted by her brother Bruce in 1955, shortly after the Cup win by him buying her shares of the team. He then owned the team until 1982. The Detroit Red Wings did not win another Stanley Cup until 1997. Since then, there have been 17 more women to have their name engraved on men's hockey's most coveted trophy. Still took until 1989 for the second, with Sonia Skurfield being engraved when the Calgary Flames, which she was a part owner of, won. Now, onto the interview. Hello, I am here with Rachel Doerrie, and we are discussing our experiences within the hockey world, specifically Rachel, who has worked extensively throughout hockey. Would you like to speak on what you've been involved with for listeners who may not know?
First of all, my experiences in hockey have been nothing but fantastic. I have no complaints. That is sarcasm. No, I've been involved in hockey for a really long time. Since I was young, I've always been interested in statistics, and I took every math course available to me at school because that's not nerdy at all. Love to take extra math and science courses. And then I went to university for sports business and worked for the Sudbury Wolves while I was there as their video coach. And that was kind of my first really like hands-on experience with analytics, which is sort of my foray into hockey, generally speaking. And so I did that for 2 years while I did school. And that was super fun because I got to learn a lot of things. I got to see junior hockey and kind of how it's different from the NHL, and then I've done some writing in hockey, mostly from an analytics perspective. I've tried to use video in there. I'm bridging the gap type of thing so that people can understand where I'm coming from a numbers perspective, but also get that video analysis. And then I worked for the New Jersey Devils for a year and a half. That was fun because we made the playoffs. And Taylor won the Hart Trophy. So that was super fun to be part of like a team that was having a really successful year. And I worked with some great people there, people who I still keep in touch with. Um, so that was fun. And then I had decided kind of while I was working there that I was going to pursue a master's. Um, and so I ended up coming back home and doing a master's of sports science and analytics um, because apparently I didn't get enough school. Um, And while I did that, I was the director of advanced performance slash assistant coach for both the men's and women's hockey programs at the school. That was 3 years. So that was, I got to see people come through the program. A bunch of them just graduated this year, actually. And showing up for their grad night after seeing them kind of come in all fresh faced it made me kind of feel old. I'm not going to lie. Um, Even though I'm only like 2 years older than some of them, it was still like, oh, wow, this is kind of weird. Um, and some of them are playing professionally now. And so that's really cool to see. And then I, while I was finishing school, I worked at the bank as well at head office in analytics. That's not really all that fun though. Unless you want to hear about me dealing with like the government, it's not really all that fun. And then the Vancouver Canucks hired me, and that was cool for a bit. And then it wasn't,
Mhm.
and I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I did meet some pretty awesome people there that I also still keep in touch with, and um, there are definitely some players that I'm actively rooting for still because I think they're really great people. People in the organization I still root for because I think they're really great people. But at the end of the day, like, wasn't the experience that I really wanted, needed, or was healthy for me. Um, and so uh, now I have another job, but I'm not allowed to say what it is. Um, and that's probably for the best because I think if people found out what my job was, they'd probably send a bunch of angry letters to that particular company. So yeah.
Yeah. That's just how I love being a woman. Um,
Love to be a woman.
yes, whatever that TikTok audio is, I think it's from like the Anne of Green Gables show that was on CBC for a bit.
I
Um,
use I use the Schitt's Creek audio, specifically like the David Rose one. I probably have watched that show start to finish a solid like 6 times. I just
I'm
love it. And I use David Rose's lines on a near daily basis in my life.
yeah, that's valid. I personally couldn't really get into it. I don't know what it was. Um, but my mom was really into it, so like I know the Schitt's Creek everything, but I didn't watch it personally, but I do think it's quite funny. So I don't blame you for, all the Schitt's Creek isms, I guess you could say. Um,
Yeah, like I use the gifs on online all the
oh,
time.
they have the best gifts. Like, why are they're always there.
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining before getting into Schitt's Creek. Thank you for giving some background. Now you mentioned you worked in the NHL and you've also you were involved with the CWHL. I remember correctly. So that was the Canadian Women's Hockey League. Not exactly a thing anymore, but the women's game is kind of always shifting for the moment. Currently there's like the two leagues in North America. It's the PHF, the Premier Hockey Federation, and then the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association. So one kind of has like regional teams and the other has like sponsored teams, and they're trying to make it work with different like some players go between leagues, some players like have kind of defected. It's the way I see it right now. I don't follow wrestling, but I see it between like WWE and AEW, but it's like completely different from that situation. I understand, but that's how I'm understanding it because of like how people will leave one league and then go to another.
Yeah, like I worked for the CWHL. Sorry. I was actually there when the NWHL was announced.
Mm.
That was an interesting day at the office, to say the very least. Um, and so it was interesting. It was kind of an interesting time to be a part of it because that was sort of when the entire landscape changed. And from a business perspective, I had my doubts. Um, I still do about the viability of that league, um, just in how they go about things. I mean, I look at it purely from a critical standpoint of having a sports business degree. we're trained to look at these kind of things with a critical eye. And I think that they've done a really good job of trying to move it into a more sustainable direction. Um, but there's still things that are problematic in my eyes from a business perspective. Um, and then you had the CWHL, which obviously was running for quite some time, and I would say that I know why they ultimately decided to shut it down. It's also not my place to say why. But what I will say is I have to commend Brenda Andress for the decision that she made, because every decision that Brenda made at the CWHL was with for the best interest of the players and for the women's game as a whole. Um, and so I think you could probably guess why she shut it down. But honestly, like working there kind of gave me a lens into how women's hockey works, and the support that they do and don't get, and ways that the NHL could help. And it was interesting to see people like Brian Burke and Cassie Campbell Pascal and Graham Rouston and these people types of people who are good people like involved. And they're allies to the women's game, and I think that that's very important. And Brian Burke has continued that, whether he's been in Calgary or in Pittsburgh, and I think that speaks volumes about him and his character. Um, and so for me, seeing the yeah, PWHPA, man, there's so many acronyms now. Whether it's like the Writing Association or the
Yeah,
Players
because
Association, like my
it's
brain
very similar.
hurts. It
Yeah.
hurts. Um, but I agreed that there needed to be a sustainable, like there needs to be a place for players to play after college, and also for the women who have the privilege of playing on the national team. Like there needs to be a league for them to play in so that they can continue to get better and continue to develop. And then you see players from overseas coming over, and I think that that's only going to start to grow the game, so that Canada and the US aren't always so dominant, because I don't, as much as I'm Canadian, like I don't think it's very good. Um, right? You look at the men's game, and on any given day, Sweden, Russia, Finland, Canada, the US, like it's a pretty competitive situation there. And so I would like to get to the point where there are maybe 3 or 4 teams in the women's game that are pretty competitive. And I don't go into every tournament knowing that the final is going to be Canada and US. And so for me, for that to happen, there needs to be one league. Um, I do firmly believe that the NHL would support one league, but they aren't willing to pick a side, and I get that, because I don't think Gary Bettman wants to be seen as somebody who picks a side and quashes another league, because he could be seen as the villain. So he's kind of told them, you guys have to work it out, come to an agreement, and then we will help you. And I know a lot of people don't like that the NHL is not helping, but I don't really have an issue with Bettman taking that stance, because he's basically saying, until you get your house in order, we're not helping you. And like, sorry, but from a business perspective, that is the smart thing to do. Until the people involved can agree on a common goal, there's no sense in getting outside help, because if 2 people can't agree, what makes you think somebody with completely different business interests is going to be able to agree? And to expect that the NHL is just going to give you a handout of money, I think is unrealistic and frankly ridiculous. Nobody in business does that. And so, at least nobody in successful business. And so, for me, it's imperative that there are concessions made on both sides so that we can have one league, and then you'll see NHL sponsorship, and NHL involvement. But until then, I think it's good to see NHL players wearing gear, whether it's PHF jerseys or PWHPA hoodies, having these players involved at the All-Star game, marketing them using EA Sports, like having Sarah Nurse on the cover, I think is fantastic. Having them sign brand deals, like I think the women's game is actually doing a far better job of marketing its athletes than the NHL is. I'm not surprised to say that at all.
Yeah.
The bar is very, very low.
Bar is underground.
Yeah, but like I said, like I don't think it's feasible for the NHL to really step up and help until the people involved with both leagues can kind of come together and say, okay, like this is our plan.
Yeah, might be the only good business decision Gary Bettman has made in the last few years,
Well, he
considering.
certainly hasn't made a good one with his new jerseys,
Oh,
so
yeah. And for those listening, the Fanatics deal news dropped this morning as we're the day we're recording this. So, yeah.
terrible idea. It's basically you know how like Gap owns like Banana Republic, but also owns Old Navy?
I didn't know that, but
Yeah,
okay.
so it's like three levels. So basically, the NHL went from Banana Republic to like Old Navy in terms of quality, and like just below Old Navy is AliExpress.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you might as well just have gone with AliExpress at this point.
NHL XGN. Like,
Honestly, like it's just you're literally doing budget jerseys for a professional league. It's
it's
ridiculous.
like every other major
Joke.
league, like the NHL wants to be this part of like the big four and stuff like that. But
MLS has Adidas still.
MLS has Adidas still. Like, uh,
I also
I
think it
don't
would
have an MLS jersey near me.
I also think it would be pretty cool if they did it, the NHL approached it similar to how the Premier League approaches it, which is let each team go out and get their own jersey, like uniform maker. Some could have Nike, some could have Adidas, some could have Puma, like
Mhm.
some can have, I don't know, New Era. There are so many different ones. And then not all the jerseys are going to look uniform because you have different manufacturers doing different things. They're going to want to be creative. They're going to want to try and outdo each other. And so I feel like you could have something there. But then like you also have the issue of like who's going to want like the teams that nobody cares about.
Yeah, like
Um
who's gonna like obviously Toronto would get a better deal than like Arizona would in terms of
Precisely. All of the
unless
Canadian teams would.
all of the Canadian teams would get so Vancouver would get a better deal than Florida or
Right. Seattle would probably get a better deal than San Jose. Like
yeah.
but at the end of the day, the amount of revenue you could bring in doing that, like think about what a Montreal Canadiens, like think of the original six teams.
Hmm.
Think about what a jersey deal for those teams is worth. Now you tack on the rest of the Canadian teams, right? And this is all
Hmm.
in US money. Okay, cool. Now tack on some of the other bigger market teams in the US.
Like the New
Like,
Yorks.
yeah, like so Nashville is a pretty big market. St. Louis is a pretty big market, like outside of the
Tampa,
original six. Tampa's a pretty big jersey market, especially because you have a lot of like Canadian snowbirds that are down there. Um,
Carolina.
Carolina, not so much.
Okay.
Dallas is becoming a hotbed. So
Yeah,
like if you did that, like you could potentially generate more money, first of all. But why would the NHL want to do that?
exactly. Why get more money when you can just be old men? Yeah, and the women's game, it's certainly an interesting area of it's a gray kind of period. They're in like a bit of a no man's land right now because the NHL doesn't want to pick a side, which is the good thing to do. Um,
Well, just think about the uproar that it would cause. Let's say the NHL picks the PHWPA, the
mhm.
like the right or
Yeah.
PWHPA. My God, I'm gonna screw this up a lot. Um, I'm done. I'm just gonna say like the tour as opposed to the league. Let's say they pick the tour, then everybody in the PHF is gonna be up in arms, and all the fans are gonna be like, same
Yeah.
on the other side. Like it's a no-win situation for Gary Bettman, so rightfully he's staying out of it.
You're alienating a group of people if
Yeah,
you
and
choose
just
one
tell them
over
to
the
get their
other.
own house in order. Like
Yeah.
that's what every smart business does.
Yeah. It is also, I don't want to say women's hockey is new because I've been playing it for a while, right? But also women's hockey wasn't really recognized as an actual sport until quite recently. The women's ice hockey was first included at the Olympics in 1998, when Cami Granado led Team USA undefeated into gold. Um, but yeah, 1998, that was 4 years before I was born. Like, that's not a very long time ago. Which I feel like a lot of people forget.
First of all, God bless Cami Granado. I love her. yeah, like it's not to say that it wasn't a sport, but they're like a lot of times, like you hear Cammy talk about it, you hear Angela James talk about it, you hear Haley Wickenheiser talk about it. They had to play in boys leagues. I had to play in a boys league growing up too. Like that was tough. It wasn't until I was like 14, maybe 13, 14 that I was able to play girls hockey in any competitive sort of fashion. Um and so it's not that the women's hockey wasn't a sport. It's just that people didn't really know that there was a demand for it, which is kind of dumb when you think
Hmm.
about it because like as much as lacrosse is Canada's national sport, it's really hockey.
Yeah.
Um like I mean, you can say what you want, but it's hockey. That's what we're known for. And so you look at it, the NHL, there's been a professional men's hockey league around for like 130 years almost. Um, there's not really been a professional women's league around for anywhere close to that. And so like really you're talking about collegiate hockey and then where do these women play afterwards in order to stay in shape to continue their careers after they play collegiate hockey. So maybe the IOC just didn't really even see a need for it because so many athletes were just kind of like retiring and there wasn't sort of this opportunity the way that there is with other sports to see it through. And now that there are leagues, like we're seeing the development of other nations, right? Finland's obviously come a long way. Nella Lapusanova has been incredible. Like I cannot wait to watch her career. She's making the boys look silly, and obviously we love to see that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like I think it's going to be fantastic for the growth of the game, and I mean, we do need to get to a point where there is a sustainable league that isn't competing with each other. Because if you look at the history of the NHL, there was the NHL and then there was the WHA, and eventually there was no more WHA, right? And so you just kind of have to understand that it might not be as soon as everybody in 2023 wants it to be, but it'll get there. And if
Mhm.
it doesn't, it'll be the fault of the people running the leagues.
Yeah.
Like you can't blame the NHL here. That's not
Yeah.
how that works.
No. Um, and yeah, like you said, like it's going to happen. It just might take a bit longer. Like, I'm thinking of the example of the National Women's Soccer League with how that's just made based in the US, but then now there's a project going um with I believe the Vancouver Whitecaps are involved with it as well. Project
And
8,
Toronto FC is as
Toronto FC
well.
is okay, Toronto FC. Um, for Project 8 for bringing women's soccer to Canada, which is, probably a good idea considering our captain for the team, Christine Sinclair, is still playing in Portland. And
Yeah, like I think it's I don't like how we do soccer in North America. First of all, I don't even like that it's called soccer. I don't like that I have to call it soccer here to fit in with everybody else because that's not what I've called it growing up. Um, if you look at how it's done around the world, there are national leagues.
Mhm.
Um, and so by that, like if you look at it, there's the Canadian Premier League, and that is really how things work, right? You have the EPL, you have La Liga, you have the Bundesliga, you have Ligue 1, you have um the Scottish League, like that they run it by countries there. And so for me, like instead of expanding the NWSL, make the NWSL the United States Women's Soccer League,
Mhm.
USWSL, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then have a Canadian league, right?
Mhm.
Have teams in Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, um, Winnipeg, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Halifax. Like you can have 8 teams. Um, maybe put one in Moncton or whatever. Like there is a demand. I mean, I see what the numbers are for women's soccer in Canada. There is a demand. And there are enough really good players that um, you could have a serious development program here. If you look at League One Ontario for men, and what that produced a guy like Alistair Johnston, who's now playing in Scotland. So if we have a league and now you have the CPL, which obviously there's a little bit of an issue there. But if you have a league that's just dedicated to Canadian women, um, or it's dedicated to Canada and you allow other people to come and you build it up, like you could potentially have a really great league. And I don't think you need to lean on the US for that. To me, this amalgamation of teams is dumb. Like maybe in the NHL where like you have like 30 teams and you don't have 30 Canadian cities that you're gonna have a league in. But when you're starting a women's soccer league, like if you have 8 teams, like you're fine.
Hmm. Yeah. I I am curiously watching. I believe they're starting within the next few years, or like they're trying to get it off the ground by like 2025, I think, which
Yeah.
yeah, which seems closer is closer than it seems. Um, yeah, it'll be well, this is about hockey, but it'll be I liked what you said about how these leagues should be national because if you think about it, there is already a lot of influence from the United States and stuff like that on Canada in like cultural industries and like media and all
Politics.
that, politics already too. There's already so much influence. We haven't won a cup in 30 years. Um,
Which is honestly, I think that argument is so stupid. Oh, like Canada hasn't won a cup in 30 years. No, 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 no. A Canadian team hasn't won a cup in 30 years. But if you
yes.
haven't noticed, most of the teams that have won the Stanley Cup, half of their rosters are Canadian.
Yeah, no.
So whether you like it or not, you're not winning a cup without Canadians.
Yeah.
So I don't know that whole argument to me is beyond stupid.
Like literally like USA hockey's better. Like no. Like is Cale Makar from Ohio? No. Is Nathan McKinnon from Wyoming? No.
When was the last time you won a gold medal in the Olympics? Thanks for coming. When
Exactly.
was the last
Exactly.
time a player from your country, was deemed to be the best player on earth? Thanks for coming. And it's going to continue because we're going to go
Yeah.
from Crosby to McDavid to Bedard.
I completely blanked on Crosby. I was like, who is between McDavid and Gretzky?
Not Lemieux or
Oh,
like
Lemieux, yeah.
there have been decades,
Mhm.
decades. It's not
Of
even close.
Canadian
It's ridiculous.
dominance. But
This is
yeah.
dumb.
And then like your greatest player is Patrick Kane. Like,
Yeah,
yes.
he probably doesn't even Patrick Kane and I like growing up, I loved Patrick Kane growing up. Because
Mhm.
we were kind of right, like I was growing up as he was kind of breaking into the league.
Mhm.
Um and I I mean, if you were to name the top 5 Canadian hockey players of all time, probably even top 10, like Patrick Kane probably doesn't even crack that list, right? Like, is he better than Gretzky? No. Is
No.
he better than Lemieux? No. Is he better than McDavid? Nope. Better than Crosby? Nope. Is he better than Orr? Nope. Better than Howe? Nope. Is he going to be better than Bedard? Bedard's going to be better than him. Is he better than like McKinnon, McCarr? Like, it's that's
It's
pretty
hard.
tough.
Yeah,
That's pretty
it's
tough.
hard. And then yeah, I don't know.
The US is coming though. Like they've got Matthews, they've got Eichel, they got the Hughes brothers. Like that's fine, but I
Oh
think it's so
yeah.
funny because the Hughes brothers literally grew up in Toronto. So
Yeah, yeah, literally. I'm like, hey,
my brother played against one of them.
oh,
Yeah, for years.
yeah. So, like, technically they should credit us for that, but whatever, whatever. I'll move on. So yeah, women's ice hockey, ways to go. Just wanted to touch a little bit about how it is existing in a hockey sphere through social media as well as media in general. You have written for the Hockey News, um, which you know is very good. You should definitely check it out. Um,
Thank you.
but yeah, so what's kind of your experiences on social media and existing as a woman in the hockey media sphere?
Are we allowed to swear?
Yep,
Um, do you want me to read you some of the replies that I get and some of the DMs that I got? Like
sure. Let's
they're
go.
absolutely horrendous.
Let's go. Let's
Um,
let's air them out. Air them out.
I will say this. There are subsections of Twitter that are really great and I find them to be actually somewhat productive. And then there are for the majority of Twitter, it is genuinely horrendous. Um, I don't think Twitter is based in reality. Like Twitter is usually a bunch of like to me, if you're an anonymous account, I have zero time for you. Like zero.
Mhm.
Because you're not even gonna willing to put your name on it and you're gonna come and insult me. Like, sorry, but your opinion means absolutely nothing. Because like you it's straight up not valid. Um, okay, let's just read some of this. Let's see. 100% it's because she fucked a player. Solid.
Oh my God.
Um, Now we're gonna go to some DMs and have some fun with that.
Hmm.
Um, like it's just honestly, it's really I would say like it's really tough. Like so, who has bigger boobs, Emily or Rachel? Um, I
The
think that
fuck?
women should fight naked online. Oh, here we go. Here's a DM I got. You dumb bitch, go do something with your life instead of whining. Have you been a spoiled little brat your entire life? I wouldn't be surprised. Go somewhere else. And then there is a slur there.
Oh.
Um, Yup. So that's good. You're setting women in hockey back by 20 years. Hope you're proud of yourself. Um, I also got multiple DMs threatening to sexually assault me. And then on TikTok we have we should get dinner and discuss this, which is wild. We also have do you sell jarred farts?
No. No. No.
Yeah. So does that
No.
answer your question about what it's like to be a woman on hockey Twitter and hockey TikTok?
Yeah. It's so much worse. It's like I'm still like building a semi-platform, so like I haven't reached all that level of degeneracy yet, but I feel like I'm getting there. So,
I it's gotten to the point, honestly, Kaya, it's gotten to the point where there have been people that have sought out my parents and siblings on social media platforms and DM'd them things about me.
what the fuck?
Yup. Oh, there's also, and this is probably my favorite one. When I got hired by Vancouver, there was a prominent TikToker, like prominent, we're talking over 50,000 followers, who went to my Instagram, screenshotted pictures of me, and made a TikTok being like, look at who the Canucks just hired. And the song was like, I think I'm about to sip. And then she's like, she's got a fat ass, she's got this, she's got that. And it's literally just like pictures of me. And like all the captions are basically like, I want to fuck her, I want to rail
What
her,
the
all this stuff. It was
fuck?
so bad. I didn't have TikTok at the time. My sister found it
No.
and she was mortified.
Holy
Yeah. This guy
shit.
made a whole TikTok about me and like talking about how basically like sexualizing me. And then he DM'd me on Instagram and was like, I didn't mean to sexualize you. And I was like, then what were
That's
you
the point of
doing?
your video. Holy shit. Oh my God.
like, like what were you doing? He's like,
What?
I just wanted to show people how hot you are. I was like, that exactly. Like,
Brain cells, no brain cells. Wow, I am sorry that happened.
I'm
Jesus.
I'm actually I'm gonna DM you the video after we record this. It is going to genuinely blow your mind.
Okay, okay, I
It is
will.
absolutely wild.
Okay. Jesus Christ.
So that's what it's like to be a woman on Twitter,
Yeah.
specifically on hockey Twitter, where like I literally had somebody like last week be like, "What are your qualifications to comment on hockey?" And I was like, "What? What?" Like,
Like, you always have to prove yourself.
but then like some faceless account that's like some dude is on there like yelling random things. People are like, "See, look, he's right." I'm like, "Okay, Bobby sunglasses selfie, sure.
Okay, naming a bunch of numbers. You're right.
Bobby bunch of numbers.
Bobby bunch of numbers. Yeah. It's definitely another considering how male dominated hockey is, so is the fan base, it seems sometimes. So
There are
there are some
yeah,
areas
like
that are decent, but there's some that make me want to punch a screen sometimes. So
yeah, like I would say like the SDPN is a great sort of group of people because I feel like Steve and Adam and Jesse do a great job of making sure that it's well known that this is an inclusive space and this is a space where people are kind to each other and
mhm.
it's a space to share ideas and all things of that nature. And I commend them for that because there aren't a lot of spaces out there for newer hockey fans that are super welcoming. And so for me, like I have to deal with a bunch of stuff online because people are dumb and mean and cowards, quite honestly. But then I see things like the SDPN and it gives me hope for the future. Because there is nobody in the SDPN kind of group that is your typical like sunglasses selfie in a car dude on Twitter. Like they're just not
Mhm.
welcome
Yeah.
in our space. And I think we need to do a better job, hockey fans as a whole, of saying like if you are going to be racist, homophobic, misogynist, any of that, like you're just not welcome here. But the NHL is like, no, come on in.
Come on, kids, walk on in. Walk on. Like you can be afraid of
And
rainbows and
then
pucks, but you're not afraid of point 900 save percentages. Anyway,
and
um,
also like I love that it's like we're trying to make other people feel included in our sport by doing these things. Well, how come I don't feel included? And I'm like, Jesus
it's not
Christ,
about you.
like that's it's not about you because
Like it's a choice.
you,
It's a choice to be a Christian.
white man, have never been marginalized ever,
Mhm.
ever. So this is not about you. It's not about you. So just sit in the corner, take a
Mhm.
breath. Your world is a safe space. Okay?
Yes.
So just cool it.
Yeah.
Cool it.
Yeah. It's like they claim that so many people are just like, oh, you're just trying to be more oppressed, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, well, you're also complaining that you're oppressed all the time. So,
Tell Find me somebody that's more oppressed than a black trans person. Please, like I need to sit down with some of these sunglass selfie people and be like, I would like to know how you are more oppressed than a black trans woman. Please tell me, what rights are you being infringed upon that these people have? I have to know.
oh yeah, but they're trying to make me take the vaccine and that's against my rights to my body. Oh, but you're anti-abortion? Like,
No, no, no. We're pro life, but also pro death penalty is my favorite argument.
oh my gosh. Yeah,
Yeah, that is the
it's
best one.
this world is a wild place.
This is a wild place. You and I have gone so off the rails. This is so
Yeah,
fun.
this is like it's is this hockey or is it American politics? Who know?
But hockey is a what I find is hockey is probably the best representation of where we are as a society right now, and that is not a good thing. Okay,
No, 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 it is not.
like when I say hockey is the best representation of where we are as a society, I'm not talking about the whole like we're having fun and skills and meh, and like it's fast paced and everything. No, that's not what I'm talking about. And everybody knows what I'm talking about. It's that we're not inclusive, we're not welcoming to people. We don't like to push the envelope. We're expected to fall in line. You're not really allowed to have a personality. Like all that stuff is just great.
We're falling into a new era of the silent generation in hockey. Like the silent generation, like pre-baby boomer of, always following like the status quo and stuff like that. Kind of
Yeah,
falling into that era of
and what's crazy is like it's actually very similar to politics in that like a bunch of GMs are basically like octo or septuagenarians. Like,
Oh
think of
yeah.
all of the GMs, like with the exception of like Kyle Dubas and Julian Breezeball, like they're all like 80 or like in their mid 70s, whatever, right? And, okay, look at Congress. These people are like half dead. Like, it's actually insane.
Remember when everyone thought Mitch McConnell died?
Oh my god.
Like a couple weeks ago? I
Yes.
just I just remember just seeing Mitch McConnell trending. I was like, oh, what did he say now? And he's like dead.
But it's like both sides. I'm like, Nancy Pelosi is literally as old as my grandmother, who sits and watches like the Decades Network every day.
Oh my gosh.
And then we have like Joe Biden, who is
Joe
so
Biden.
old. Then we have I'm not even then we have the other guy, and he's basically Lord Voldemort at this point.
The guy
Like
that's getting arrested today?
yes. But
Yes.
also like then you look at like New Zealand, and when like Jacinda Ardern was their prime minister, like look how forward thinking they were. And it was because they had somebody that was somewhat representative of the age of their population.
Yes.
Right. And so I think
Yes.
when you look at hockey as a whole, look at the PHF and look at the PWHPA. There aren't a bunch of old white haired people running the show there. It's young people who are able to relate and level and understand how to market to their target audience. The NHL does not need to market to a 55-year-old white man. He's going to be a hockey fan no matter what. You need to market to the younger kids, which is why the next generation games are so important. You
Yes.
need to
Yes.
market to the LGBTQ plus community because that's a subsection of fans that currently don't feel welcome and need to, because guess what? They're going to buy things. It's important. You
Yeah.
need to market to people of color. You need to, at minimum, make it more inclusive for them because you're literally like, I don't know what business practice told you that we should only target white people, but it's a bad business practice. Don't do it.
It's like they're trying to pick a side in like what the
You're
political sphere of the
limiting
world is right now,
yourselves.
but you're limiting yourself because they're eventually going to hate you for whatever you do anyway, even if you.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's a wonderful
It's
world. Um, we kind of touched on it just a bit then, but I wanted to kind of wrap up with what improvements. Well, for marketing the women's game, you already kind of mentioned like it's not run by old men. Yeah, but
yeah.
also including women in the NHL. Um, what improvements are there? And also getting women to be fans of the sport. Like Women's Empowerment Night is a thing by some of the teams in the league, but I know the Rangers did it a couple of days ago. They just had like their logo with like some shadows around it and there's like purple or something, and they like just tweeted at with like the practice jerseys. It's like celebrating Women's Empowerment Night at the Garden, and that was like all they said about it. And I was just like, okay, that's weird.
Okay, so first of all, like I get why you're having these nights, but you wouldn't have to have them if the people felt empowered in the first place or felt welcome. And
Yes.
so for me, um, I look at it and I'm like, number one, okay, so like I'm a woman and I have because I grew up as an athlete, I have a little bit more of a stocky build than your average woman. Like my mom is very petite, right? My sister is like a size -2, like literally the thinnest thing you've ever seen, right? And if they want NHL merchandise, there's not really NHL merchandise available to them. Like there isn't a good selection. And like I just for funsies had my sister try on my NHL jersey and it went to her knees. Like that is not your women aren't going to buy NHL fan gear if there isn't something for them. So if you look at what the NFL has done with women's fan gear, the Aaron Andrews stuff is absolutely fantastic. Um, my God, you have Fanatics. Like if Fanatics can manufacture women's gear for the NFL, they can manufacture women's gear for the NHL. This is not hard. It's a choice.
Mhm.
And so for me, I look at it and you have to give women something so that they feel a part of it. Because if you go to a game and let's say your partner, like let's say you're going with your boyfriend and they have apparel, whether it's like a hoodie or whatever, um, and you don't, like you feel different. I'll be honest with you. When I worked for New Jersey and in Vancouver, they didn't have women's apparel for us. So like when I was getting all of like my coaching staff gear, I didn't get half of it because there was no women's stuff and the men's stuff was too big for me.
Oh my
So like I
gosh.
just didn't they just didn't have anything. And I'm like, I
Hmm.
am a staff member.
Yeah.
Like what are we doing? And so you're just not making it. Like by that I kind of felt like, oh, okay, well, I'm not really meant to be here then. Like it's one of those things where you don't realize it makes women feel excluded, but it does. In the same way that like you're telling me that if you offered pride hats, like you know the dad hats?
Yeah.
Okay, if you made dad hats but the logo was like the pride colors, you're telling me people wouldn't buy those? Like
Exactly.
I know so many people who would buy them. I would buy one just to show support. Um, or t-shirts. Like a hockey puck, what am I gonna do? Bring a hockey puck with me to the game and like wave it around? Like,
Yeah,
wee!
no.
No.
You need apparel in order
I want
to.
I'm not saying you need to make pride jerseys available because like those are expensive and maybe might not be accessible to everybody because they might not be able to afford it.
Mhm.
But a $34.99 hat, like I'm sure people would be interested in that. A t-shirt, a tank top, like things of that nature that would make people feel welcome. Instead of saying we skate for Black lives, it is actually not difficult to just say Black lives matter.
Yeah.
Like it's really not hard. Um and amplifying the voices of players like PK Subban, Matt Dumba, Wayne Simmons, Keandre Miller, like and at within the same token, punishing people for racist acts. Like I'm sorry, but if you utter a slur, you're suspended. Like that's the end of that, right? Like spitting should not be a longer suspension than slurring.
Hmm.
Like it just shouldn't, right? We need to send a message that those types of behaviors are not welcome here because it excludes other people. And if you do that, then you'll make other people feel welcome, whether it's by the way that you show people that you care, by making apparel available, by having more women's bathrooms. Like, I mean, there are like two women's bathrooms to every, or two men's bathrooms to every one women's bathroom in like some facilities. Like, that's
Hmm.
crazy. It's not accessible, especially because like women generally take longer to go to the bathroom because we can't just stand at a urinal,
Yeah.
right? So it's just
Yeah.
like from that perspective, like I don't want to go wait in line. And so that's inaccessible to a degree. We also need to do a much better job with people with disabilities, like that community. Things like properly using alt text on communications, not using weird fonts on social media so that people who
Yep.
can't use them, being careful of the language that we use, involving these people in your campaign so that you don't send something out only to have it pointed out that it like directly goes against what that community wants. Like there are just involve people like Brock McGillis is right there. You can involve him. Renee Hess is right there. You can involve her. Chanel Keenan is right there. You can involve her. Those three people cover all three of the things that I just mentioned, and they would go a long way in the NHL's messaging, marketing, making it more inclusive, accessible. Like instead of having Josh Richards be your consultant of like being a loser, basically, have these three who will actually help you advance the game. That's what I would do.
All right. Well, th thank you for your suggestions for the NHL. Um,
They're going to do none of those, by the
they're
way.
gonna do, yeah, they're not gonna do it. They're gonna make oh, instead of we're adding on to the digital boards and we're gonna put them on the glass panels now. Like,
Yeah, and Tony D'Angelo is in charge of inclusivity.
oh my God, Tony D'Angelo, did you hear he wants to be like a GM one day?
Bye.
Yeah,
No.
he wants to like run a team or something like that. And I'm like, the Proud Boys, like the only team you should be running is the prison team, bro.
Yeah,
Go,
you can go coach
we
somewhere
know where
else.
you were on January 6th, Tony. Anyway.
We don't know, but like, would we be surprised?
Would
Also,
be
no.
surprised. Oh yeah, but that's like I have a mental list. Anyway,
I have a Kaya's taking names, everyone.
taking names, knowing faces. Who was just scouring the videos? Anyway, yes. Thank you
We
for
need
joining.
more Braden Holtbys and
Yes,
more Travis Dermotts, who wears pride tape every day and
yes,
every game.
yes,
That's what we need, more of that and less of Ivan Provorov and Tony D'Angelo. We need less of
and less of whatever's left of James Reimer's hairline. Anyway,
that.
sorry.
Bad.
Thank you, Rachel, for joining me. It's been really fun discussing the world of what it's like being a woman.
Love to be woman's.
Love to be whammon. All right. Thank you for joining me. Now for your fun fact of the day, women's ice hockey quickly gained popularity on the heels of the 1998 Olympics. While many colleges and universities offered women's ice hockey before, the attention focused on the sport gradually picked up pace, and finally, in 2000, it officially became a sanctioned championship NCAA sport. The inaugural Women's Frozen Four tournament took place in March of 2001, a tournament that has continued for years following, including the recently concluded 2023 tournament, with the Wisconsin Badgers defeating the Ohio State Buckeyes 1-0 to win the championship. Thank you, Rachel, for joining me, and thank you for listening to this show. You can find me personally on Twitter at RealKayame and the show at GTGPod. Hope you enjoyed. Stay safe and see you again in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody.